Okay, question number 1. Determine the measure of all the angles in standard position, so there's our first definition that we were looking at before, between negative 800 degrees and 800 degrees that are coterminal with 85. Sketch all the angles. Okay, so I'll do 85 in blue, 85 degrees. We want all of the ones coterminal with that. In other words, that they end in the same place. I'm going to use lots of colors and get you really hypnotized here. Can you see that if you would start at 85 and go all the way around, how many degrees are there in a circle? 360. So this one in green would be 360 plus 85. So coterminal angles here. And generally, you also always write the one that you have. 85 degrees happens to end in the same place as 85 degrees. Makes sense. So 85 degrees, if I add 360 to that, that'll be 445 degrees. If I add 360 again, that will get me to 805 degrees, but that's too far. Right? We're only supposed to go between negative 800 and 800. So in the same way that you can keep adding 360 degrees, can you see that if I wanted to figure out this first negative one, I could subtract 360 degrees? So 360 minus 85 would be negative 275 degrees. And then, if I subtracted 360 again, anybody using just pencil? Because that diagram will be terrible by now. Even with colors, I think it's starting to look pretty terrible, but also pretty. Like it's kind of, I like it. Like should sell that for millions of dollars somewhere, artwork. If I do that one, subtract another 360 off of this, I'm going to get negative, I'll keep it blue, negative 635 degrees. And if I did it again, it would be past negative 800. Okay. So those 4 angles are all the coterminal angles between negative 800 and 800. Oh my goodness, look at B. B says write them all. We did 4. There's an infinite amount of them, and we are supposed to write them all down. I'm sorry, this is going to be a very long class. Because if we have to write them all down one at a time, it's going to take forever. So mathematicians come up with a way to write something down for all of them. They do it this way. They say, well, start with 85 degrees. Okay? And then what's the pattern you do to find another one? Right? If I had 85, how did I find 445? I added 360. If I wanted to find the 805, I'd have to add 360 again. If I wanted to find another one after that, I'd have to add 360 again. Can you see that every time you add 360, you find another one? In fact, every time you subtract 360, you find another one. So how do mathematicians say, I want to add or subtract 360 degrees as many times as I would like? And they show that by saying 85 degrees plus 360 times, and they introduce a variable. They really like k in this situation. 360 times k, and then they define that k can't just be anything, right? You can't have k to be a half, because then you're only adding 180. But k could be, you could add 360 once, you could add 360 twice, you could add 360 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, or you could subtract it once, you could subtract it twice, you could subtract it 3 times. What are those numbers? They're whole numbers, but they're not just positive whole numbers. They could also be negative whole numbers. What do we call those numbers? Integers. So we say that k belongs to the integers. Next question, do you remember the fancy symbol for integers? For real numbers, it's an R. For integers, it's a Z. Comes from the German word Zahlen, which starts with Z, which means number. Okay? Some North American textbooks use an I, because they couldn't figure out how integers started with a Z. So they switched it to I. Right? Probably some North American students just think this is an I that's written kind of on an angle. No, it is supposed to be a Z. So in this course, if you did an I or Z, both would be accepted. But next year when you're in the IB course, it's an international program. They use the proper international symbols, so it will be a Z moving forward. And this way, we wrote them all down, every single one of them, because we added them up forever. Okay, questions for practice, 4 and 5.